Hello and welcome to another bonus episode of the Fertility Podcast for the Fertility Show, which is taking place in Manchester on Saturday the 23rd and Sunday the 24th of March. I'm Natalie Silverman, host of the Fertility Podcast, and I'm going to be hosting the Let's Talk Fertility Stage. And as part of my involvement with the show, I'm speaking to some of the guests that I will be chatting to at the event to give you more of an understanding of what you can expect. Now, a big part of what we want you to know about the show is how much emphasis we're putting on the importance of support. It's such a huge part of when you're kind of navigating your way through trying to conceive, whether you're just starting out, whether you've started treatment, whether you've had failed treatment, whether you're trying to decide what to do next. And we've brought together a whole host of experts to talk to you about the kind of support that is available. I think it's really important to know that it's best to not wait till crisis happens. If you can arm yourself with the tools to help you go through the different stages of your journey, whether, like I say, you're just trying or whether you're starting treatment, then if things don't go to plan, hopefully you'll be in a better place to deal with whatever you need to do next. We know that it's a huge emotional toll trying to conceive. We know the mental health implications, and what we want to do is help you reach out to some of the people that you could go to for support. Now, the Let's Talk fertility sessions are all about you asking questions. The seminars are more structured, where you'll hear speakers and there is a chance to try and ask some questions at the end. But these sessions are exactly for that purpose. So please don't feel your questions are stupid. Believe me, there are no stupid questions, okay? And if you're not comfortable asking them there and then, there are ways that you can ask anonymously at the show, or you can contact me on my different socials at Fertility Poddy. You can direct message me, and I'll put all the details of how you can get in touch in case you're on the move on the show notes for this episode. So make sure you're listening to the end, because I'll also put all the talk times of the people that I'm going to be speaking to and details, of course, of how you can get tickets for the show. So first up, we're going to be hearing from Sarah Banks, and I'll let her explain what it is she does.
I'm Sarah Banks. I work with fertility clinics to help them increase the amount of emotional support that they give to patients. So that includes training staff, setting up support groups, and helping generally understand how patients feel whilst going through treatment and help staff to develop a culture of support.
Now, Sarah is going to be talking on both days of the fertility show. She's going to be chatting with me on Saturday at 11:30, and the session is called The Importance of Support. And she's also going to be involved in the Fertility Fest activities on Sunday at 10:30, but I will put all the details of when all the people in this podcast are talking, as well as the links to the show, so you can see exactly what's going on and where. So Sarah, let's talk a bit about the support and how it's been working, because you started with support groups, didn't you, after becoming a coach? And what kind of feedback were you getting from people about the lack of support they were finding?
Well, I know from personal experience of going through treatment and struggling for 6 years by the time we finally had my son, that there was no support outside of the clinics, and they're great when you're in the clinic, but most of the time you're feeling upset when you're outside of it, and if you don't know anyone else that's going through treatment, it's very difficult to find people to talk to who truly understand what you're going through and don't make comments that are hurtful or aren't very helpful. So I knew from my personal experience and from others that I'd spoken to that there isn't enough support around. So I set up a local support group on Facebook and face-to-face meetings, and now run a couple in the area, and the feedback's been brilliant, and the people on the Facebook group are fantastic at supporting one another as well. There is somebody posting a few times a day and getting up to sort of 20-30 comments in response of support. So that peer support is so essential and has been really well received as well.
And what kind of things? Because sometimes I think that we're maybe concerned that what's bothering us might be trivial. Do you think that as people start to see what other people post, they feel that then they're not stupid in the things they want to share, and they get that confidence to then ask for help ultimately.
Definitely, and I see that across the meetings and the Facebook groups. So yeah, a lot of the time people will feel like there's something wrong with them because of the thoughts they're having, and I felt the same. But it almost justifies your feelings, and it makes you feel like you're normal feeling those things, and that it's okay. You can say things. People share some of the most in-depth things and things that they haven't shared with anybody else in the group, and they feel happy to do that because they know they won't be judged. They know that most other people will have felt the same at some point. And it just, when you're feeling out of control, you're feeling lonely, it really helps to know there's other people who feel exactly the same, that it's okay, and that you can support one another through it.
And the beauty of it being online with something like Facebook is if somebody's in a difficult situation and somebody says something insensitive, they could ideally nip off to the loo and maybe share it in the group and maybe get some support, of what to say in response to a ridiculous comment back, couldn't they?
Definitely. And, things hit us, things trigger us all different times of the day. You don't know when that'll be, and there's somebody there all the time that can reply to you. And there's so many people in the group now that it's great. There's always someone who will reply to you. And yeah, sometimes it's just somebody saying, I completely understand how you feel. It's okay. And yeah, someone you can rant with, someone who'll say, oh, it's awful, isn't it? And no, and not think that you're stupid or that the things you're thinking aren't valid. It's great to have that support.
And let's talk a bit about the face-to-face meetups. You're based in Yorkshire. What kind of frequency are those meetings happening?
So one of the ones that I run is every month. The other one is every other month. And it's great. People get to see one another face to face. They build relationships, which means that when they go to the waiting room at their clinic, they recognise faces, as most of us sit with our heads down, not looking at one another in the waiting room. So to have a friendly face is really good. So you see people that are at the clinics that you're at. It's great to have that support there. And I find that we've had meetings where people have started off crying, but by the end of it, they've been laughing because we've talked about some of the indignities of going through treatment and some of the things people have said. And it's a really lovely atmosphere. They're not depressing meetings. They're really positive. They're really informative, and it's great the support that people give each other, even though they're in the middle of it themselves. The support they still give to others is unbelievable, and it's so great to see.
I think it's really important that you mentioned that kind of positive aspect to it, because I've had conversations with people, and I myself, when I was going through treatment, didn't look online for any of the kind of groups that I might be able to find, because a friend of mine that had been through treatment went, don't look at them, they're all negative. And it was only once I'd had treatment that I started to look and realise the support online. And I think it's really good to highlight that yes, there are going to be sad stories exchanged because it's the struggle, isn't it? Yet, like you've just described, it's how you turn it round and how you can relate to other people, knowing that somebody else has been there already, if this is where you're at.
Definitely. And I think being able to give each other advice on coping through it as well, knowing you're not alone is really great. But other advice on coping, on holistic therapies they've tried, different things like that, just different ways of coping whilst going through treatment. And it's just like having a different set of friends who completely understand. It's just supportive going through it. And yeah, I wanted the groups to be more positive, to be a bit more action focused. So if people are struggling with something, trying to find a solution to help them through whatever it is they're struggling with. So they were getting something else out of it other than the support, so that it was positive. I know it's really hard when people say, just stay positive. And it's not about that. It's about giving them positive coping mechanisms whilst they're going through it, just to help them through. And that's not saying you can't be sad when you come to the group. It's about helping you get through that.
And what kind of points do people reach out to you? Is it normally when they're having treatment and maybe it's the 2-week wait that is that agonising period and they feel completely abandoned by the clinic, or they've had failed treatment and they feel again abandoned, or is it when people are just trying?
It's a real mix all the way through. So some of the people on the groups are people who are really early stages, so we'll have meetings where they're learning quite a lot because they're really early, haven't started treatment. You have to manage the horror stories for people sometimes, if people have been through a few cycles and have had not a great experience. So it's managing that versus those that are brand new. But then, yeah, definitely you find that people are more active during treatment, asking, saying, oh, I'm feeling a bit down because I've only, my scan's showing I've only got this many follicles, or I'm in the 2-week wait, how can I keep myself occupied? Any advice for that? Or they're messaging to say that they've got a negative result, they're feeling really down and just need some support. Or that they've had the positive story as well, and they want to share it to give others hope as well. And it's great because people now know each other on the group. When people are in the 2-week wait, they're saying, hope you're getting on all right, and good luck with your test, let us know. And then when there's a positive result on the group, people are so genuinely pleased for others that are going through it because they know the struggle, they've been there themselves. So yeah, it's a really broad scope, which is why it's so great having these groups, because you get people in a full cycle coming through.
And is it predominantly women? Do you have some men in there?
There are men in there. It's predominantly women who post in the Facebook group. At the meetings, it's a bit of a mix. There are some women who come on their own, but quite a few come in couples. And I find that the men sometimes are quite quiet to start with, but once they start talking, it's great. They really open up. They feel comfortable chatting to one another. And I've really noticed that when the men start talking, sometimes they just will go, and it's like the first chance they've had to really say how they're feeling. So it's great they feel comfortable talking at the face-to-face groups. So I do think that they're more active in the meetings than they are online.
Ultimately, it's about highlighting this safe space that people can come and talk to people that get where they're at, male or female. And I think it's brilliant what you're doing. And I think, again, one of the things that we want to get across by having this chat now is it's something that's going to be recreated at the Fertility Show. And whilst you are going to be in quite a big space because you're in an exhibition hall, the Let's Talk Fertility Stage is hopefully more intimate in that we'll have this little stage where we'll be sitting and we won't be too far away from one another, and the kind of questions that you hope people feel comfortable to ask, I mean, can pretty much be anything about where they're at, what they're going through, can't they?
Definitely. There's no silly question. Please ask anything that you want to know. This is the perfect opportunity to ask all the different experts that are there, all the people who've been through treatment previously. It's a perfect opportunity to ask any questions you've got. Make a list, come with your list and ask questions, and there's always someone there that you can talk to. There's the stage, the Q&A stage, there's the IVF Babble Lounge. So if you don't feel comfortable asking questions in the Q&A session, then there'll be lots of us around, me included, in the Babble Lounge that you can just come and speak to privately, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions people have got. I'm very open about my own experience, but also I speak to lots of people, so I'll help in any way I can. So yeah, please come along and take the opportunity to ask all the questions you've got, because the more informed you are, the better, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, we're looking forward to chatting with you more and seeing you in Manchester.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to seeing everybody that can make it.
Sarah's details will be in the show notes, which I'll give you at the end of the episode. Now, as well as support in your day-to-day, it's also essential that when you're at work, you can kind of get through all of this, knowing what time you can take off if your work has a policy in place, knowing how you can have the conversations about what is going on, because it can be so stressful trying to do your job and go through all of this. And I talk to too many people who sadly have to stop work, or I've even heard stories of people feeling pushed out of their work when they've had to take time out, and it's just not right. And Fertility Network UK recently launched a brilliant new initiative called Infertility in the Workplace, where they're hoping to educate organisations about having a policy in place if people need to take time out for IVF treatment, and just helping with the understanding of what people go through, the emotional and mental health implications. And Aileen Feeney, who's the Chief Executive of Fertility Network UK, will be part of this session that Hortense is going to be in with me, and we'll be talking more about it. So again, It's a place for you to come and ask questions if it's exactly where you're at, trying to work out what you say to work. I mean, personally, I was doing a live radio show. I was going through my treatment. That was an interesting one to try and navigate my way through. And it really wasn't easy. I didn't know who to talk to, first and foremost. So as much information as possible that we can give you in this session, the better. And here's Hortense explaining about her own experience and what she's doing in her workplace.
My name's Hortense Thorpe. I'm originally from France, but I've been living in the UK for 12, 13 years. I work for a large utilities company. It's Centrica British Gas. And like, unfortunately, many other people, I have been struggling with fertility. I've been trying to conceive for a number of years and have gone through 2 IVF cycles so far.
Now, Hortense is going to be at the Fertility Show talking about infertility in the workplace. And it'd be really interesting to hear what your experience has been like so far working in such a big corporate company. So from that kind of initial stage of having to maybe have further investigations as far as what you were trying to find out was going on, were you at that point able to take time out from work, talk to somebody, get support in what you were able to achieve to go off and have tests?
Yeah, and I'm actually really feeling very lucky. It's a privilege to work for my company at the moment because it has really helped me. And that's what I want to talk about to more people, to try and get more organizations to support their employees going through tough situations like these. And so when I started having fertility issues or recognizing that actually it was not happening and it couldn't happen naturally, obviously there were so many appointments to attend. I even had several surgeries.
Right.
To try and fix things before we even could start IVF. And we do have flexible working, and my type of work, I'm an outsourcing manager, so I work with suppliers. I'm based in an office, but we can work from home, we can work from anywhere. We have lots of tools that can enable us to work from even our phones, you know, and that has really helped because even though I was going to lots of appointments, missing work time during the day, I could still catch up on my work in more convenient times in the evenings, etc. It's helpful to have flexible working, but the most important thing is your manager, you know, how caring and supportive they are and how they trust that you can still do a good job whilst, you know, sort of missing a few days of work. Or I didn't have to really take days off apart from when I had surgeries, but I didn't really take time off for appointments, for example, because I could catch up on my work later on.
So when you knew you were going to have to go for tests and the surgeries that you described, were you aware that there was a policy in place because it had been spoken about, or did you go and ask and then find out that they were going to be lenient and flexible in what you needed to go off and do?
Well, yeah, actually, you know, I didn't know initially. Yeah. It was only by chance that we have a women's network which organizes events regularly. And at one of those events, somebody mentioned that actually we had an IVF leave policy. And so all of a sudden there was these 5 days of paid leave that I could take every year.
Wow, okay.
For months. Yeah, so and that really sort of, that was quite a relief because I thought at the time I hadn't started the process yet. I was still going through all the surgeries and the checks. And so when I thought, oh, actually, you know, there's that I can benefit from and that's not too bad. Actually, 5 days is not that much.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel bad for saying it because it's already a great step, but 5 days, you can easily take those 5 days within one cycle, depending on, you know, how flexible your work is. I think there can be more than that though in the policy.
Well, so you're now working in your company and also you're working with Fertility Network to make these conversations happen and to educate people, and it's a new initiative that Fertility Network are trying to make happen about infertility in the workplace. And so you're in this place now where you're still trying to conceive. What's the situation with work, having used up that time? Where do you stand?
I think obviously if I do need to take more time off, it'll have to be on my probably my annual leave and things like that.
Right.
I don't feel too stressed about that particularly. I think it's more how you get support throughout that journey or the quest for fertility, really.
Yeah. Because obviously your work now know that that's what you're trying to achieve because you've told them. So that stress of telling has kind of gone. Do you feel there's any pressure? Because there has been conversations from people that I've spoken to in the past that by telling their work that this is what they're trying to do, they might feel that they've maybe been pushed out or been less supported, because ultimately it means you're then going to be hopefully going on maternity. You haven't felt any pressures around that or had any conversations with people who might have felt like that?
Thankfully, I've not experienced that myself. I do hope that our company is now, open enough to all that and supportive enough, because they recognize, and any organization should recognize that to get really productive employees, they should get happy employees. And maternity leave should not be a reason for, to get rid of somebody, because on the contrary, it's probably people that are very dedicated to their jobs, very passionate about it, and they should retain them. And in our company, actually, they do put in place a lot of things to help us stay whenever possible, but also come back and return to work after maternity leave. So there's a good maternity package. There's lots of benefits like that. But the most important thing is how supportive your manager is, and your colleagues as well. So yes, you were saying, some people may feel some pressure, maybe from their peers or from their managers. I think it's really incredible that could happen still nowadays. In our team, in my organization, is on the contrary. I've opened up sort of a can of worms by talking about it, because then you're likely to get questions about it from people, and they don't really sometimes realize that you might not be in a good place to respond to questions about how it went, are you pregnant yet, or things like that. So people have to realize that it's still kind of a difficult subject, but just by caring, by asking people how they are, wherever stage they're at in that journey or that quest, at least knowing that people care for us is really important. And I have seen that more and more now, and colleagues, stop for a minute and ask me, so how are you? And that's all we need to hear, sometimes. So yeah. It makes a big difference.
Is that part of the training that you're hoping to help other organisations understand? Is that language that's used?
Yeah, so within our organisation, we're, for example, starting to prepare a manager toolkit and an employee toolkit to help people understand what it's like to go through, and the things to expect, the things that can help, the things that can hinder, or stress people. And I believe that the Fertility Network UK is really keen to develop more policies around fertility for organisation across the UK, and we're definitely linking up with them to try and follow that lead. And improve, even though we've already got some elements in place and people are very caring, and we've got flexible working, which helps, but not all jobs are available for flexible working. So it's not always appropriate, but there are definitely other elements that can still help the employees are in those situations. So manager toolkit, I think, is important for people to know how to handle an employee that is going through that, and what to expect, what are the things that help them, the things that can stress them. And then for the employees is if there are things like the IVF policy and the paid leave, and know that it's available, but also things like a healthcare system, or we have something called My Care, which is a hotline, and you can call anytime and get counseling, you can get support, so you can speak to somebody.
That's
and I
amazing.
think that's also, the mental health aspect is just really as important as the rest.
Yeah, definitely. So you're obviously going to be at the Fertility Show in Manchester talking about this. What would you say if people are coming and they're keen to come and ask questions at the session, if people are wanting to initiate this conversation in their workplace, what advice would you give to start to find out whether there is a policy, who to go to ask first? What would your advice be?
Yeah, well, so I think if they don't have a fertility group like the one we created last year, I would say the first point of call is HR. They will know whether there's any leave or any other flexible benefits like that can help them. Then I would definitely open up to my manager, because that's really important. It's such a big cause of stress when you need to take time off and have to explain. Then you might not be in that frame of mind at the time where you really, you're in a rush to book something, for example, maybe a collection the next day or something like that. So if you've spoken to them about it beforehand and tried to explain to them, that this is going to be a tough sort of phase in your life, and them caring and supporting you through it will make a huge difference. Then it gives them some tools or some tips to, how to handle you throughout that phase and how to be as supportive as they can. And then listening to podcasts or speaking to people that have gone through it. There's a forum, for example, in the Fertility Network UK website. You can ask questions and speak to people there, and try and find out exactly what to expect if you've not gone through it yet and you're at the beginning of your journey, to try and sort of also explain maybe to your colleagues. I know some people might feel that they don't want to tell anyone because you put yourself at risk, but at the same time, it can help you at the right moment. So it's a balance. You need to find the right balance of who you want to share it with, and how much you want to share, but also feel that, expect that you can also be helped by sharing a little bit. So I know that sometimes they might quiz you or ask you when you're not ready to, you're not in that frame of mind, or you're having a really bad day, or you've had a really bad, news about IVF or your tests or whatever. And I know that can be tough, but sometimes I think, and I've experienced it a lot of the times now, that it really is great to know that you have a group of people around you that feel for you and that really care for what's happening to you.
Especially when you think of the amount of time that you are at work. These are the people that you're there with every day, and to have to then isolate yourself from them because you think that they might not get it seems such a shame, when, as you've described, I'm hoping that you were, so pleasantly surprised when you did say what was going on and realise that there was this amazing support network that if you didn't know about, imagine, what a different place you'd be in.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, you don't realise that probably a lot of your colleagues have experienced somehow what you're going through, or maybe, have been there before, or are. You might be surprised that actually some are exactly where you are.
Yeah.
And knowing that and sharing that with someone really will make a difference. For example, I've buddied myself up with someone who's now got a lovely girl, and she's just an amazing woman herself, and she's been my rock, because every really big questions I had, for example, I was really scared about the injections. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do it myself. And she explained it to me, and she was there on the phone, and she was saying, I can come and help you do it if you want. I can come to appointments if you want. And that's just been amazing.
Yeah.
And having someone who knows exactly how you feel and has gone through exactly the same makes a big difference to hear it from someone else.
Yeah, definitely.
But also there's other people within this group that are exactly at the same phase of IVF as me. So it's good to sort of, support each other and sort of check on each other from time to time.
One less thing to worry about when you know that your day-to-day has got your back, so to speak. Well, Hortense, thank you. And we'll put the details of when your session's going to be in the podcast so people know and they can come and ask you questions, and look forward to chatting to you more.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the show, because I think people will get a lot of support and hope, and it's very positive to go out there and see others and share your experience with other people.
So I'll put the details of when that session is taking place in the show notes. And last but not least is Rosie Tabman. Rosie is a nutritional therapist, and she explains how your nutrition can support you whilst you are trying to conceive, and the importance of really understanding it and getting it right.
Hi, I'm Rosie. I'm a nutritional therapist. I specialise in fertility, so I'm based in Manchester, but I have got clients all over the UK and a couple abroad.
And Rosie and I are going to be speaking on the Let's Talk Fertility stage at the Fertility Show. And with us both being in Manchester, I brought her into what's a bit of a noisy workspace today. So if you can hear chat in the background, that's why. Because I wanted to talk with Rosie about what you can expect if you come and hear her chat. She's doing 2 sessions, one on Saturday at 11:30, talking about the importance of support, and then one on the Sunday at 1:45, talking about mind, body and soul. And I thought it was really interesting to get an insight into what kind of support as a nutritional therapist you can offer people. So where do you start?
So with one-to-one, it will be quite different than the talk that I'm doing at the Fertility Show, because it's individualised as opposed to generic. But with my one-to-one clients, it's a full case history, really understand their lifestyle and also what they eat.
Because there's things that you can do. I know you give lots of advice on your website. There's changes that you can make day to day that aren't that hard, and they're quite obvious. One thing that I read was about starting your day with a warm water and lemon.
Yeah.
And I know that from kind of detox stuff. What does that help with?
So it really just clears out your digestive system, starts to stimulate your liver for all those lovely digestive enzymes, and helps you absorb your food. Because I suppose the mantra that I always say to my clients is, it's not a case that you are what you eat, but you are what you absorb, think and drink. So that lemon water is really great for that absorption element.
And when people are trying to focus on the best way to manage infertility, or even if you've not been diagnosed with anything, but you're trying and it's taking longer and you're trying to do everything you can, you talk about like the way that you're thinking about things day to day. What kind of advice do you offer with that?
So a few things. So I think one of them is around the mindset around food. And clients always come to me and they say, I know I shouldn't have this, it's really bad, or I'm trying to have more of that, I know it's good. And I say, just stop right there. Like, you're placing value judgment on food. And if I have 10 green smoothies a day and you have 10 McDonald's, I'm no better person. So first of all, I say that value judgment needs to go. And that's the same for when people say, like, Rosie, you'll be so proud of me, I've had this really healthy salad. And I'm like, well, you know, how did it make you feel? Because that's what's important. So first of all, definitely value judgment around food. Secondly, so a low-fat diet is definitely a dirty word, and I hope every single nutritional therapist, fertility, anyone's nutritional therapist clinic, let alone with infertility, because we need fats. They form the basis of all of those lovely hormones, and cholesterol's been given a bad reputation, but in actual fact it's super, super important for those gorgeous sex hormones that we need building in the body.
So if somebody comes to you and says, I'm eating really healthily, and you then have to then go, well, what do you mean by that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would say often and I've seen a lot more of this recently, where people are coming to me and they've gone on this whole mission of cutting back in their mind, in a way to become more, they often describe it as more clean. But then often this cutting back means that they're actually cutting out big food groups, and they're actually constantly putting their body under a state of detoxification, which your body shouldn't be in that state over a long period of time. It's actually not healthy. So yeah, if people say I'm eating really healthy, or even if people say I'm not eating healthily, you know, I'd always want to know, well, what are you eating?
Because there is a relationship between weight and fertility, and if people are overweight, all too often they're told to lose weight.
Yeah.
And it's not quite that straightforward, is it? Because by depleting their diet from some of the things that you've just mentioned, it's going to have an adverse effect. So what's the optimal advice that you can give if people are looking at their fertility, they're looking at their weight as a starting point, especially if people are maybe enlisting in one of the mainstream ways of losing weight, like one of the obvious programs that we won't name names.
Yeah. So I would say, first of all, you don't want to cut down on nutrient-dense food. So you want to keep that in your diet. So first of all, what things can you strip out of your diet that aren't nutrient-dense? That's your beige. Essentially think your beige, like that's the simplest way to put it. But then if you are stripping out the beige, what are you putting in instead? Definitely don't strip out vegetables, including your nice starchy coloured vegetables, your beetroots, your butternut squash. Keep those in. You want to bring in some healthy fats and protein at every meal. But essentially, I often say dial down on your carbohydrates, specifically the beige, and dial up on some of those healthy fats and moderate protein. So as a kind of rule of thumb, a Mediterranean style diet is a good place to start.
So Rosie will be at the Fertility Show and you'll be able to ask her questions. So that's just a little taster, some food for thought of how you can come and find out more. And one thing that I just wanted to ask you about before we say bye, that I read about on your website was when it comes to PMS, which is something that, you know, most women manage. I read you'd talked about reducing exposure to stuff like plastic bottles. Tell me just quickly what impact that has on your cycle.
It basically impacts the cells in the body. So the plastics have got something called a xenoestrogenic property to them.
See, I didn't say that because I couldn't, so I'm glad you
Yeah,
did.
xenoestrogen. So they are basically, if you break that word down into Latin, it means strange estrogen. So they attach to the side of the cell, and they attach and bind to the part of the cell where your own estrogen should attach, but they almost block it. So they mean that your estrogen can't have the same impact on that cell. They're like they're almost like the key in that lock, so your own key can't get in there. And when that strange estrogen attaches, it kind of sends your whole body haywire because that whole mechanism of action isn't working. So yeah, cutting out plastics for everyone,
Yeah,
including PMS.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I hope that this gives you more of an idea of some of the conversation that will be happening on the Let's Talk Fertility stage. The show notes for this episode are the fertilitypodcast.com/importance of support. And I will put links, as I've said, to the people I've chatted to with regards to when you can hear them talk, also details of how you can get tickets. And don't forget that we've already done an episode about the Fertility Show, talking to some of the other speakers. I'll put that link in the show notes. And if you're coming along, get in touch. It'd be really lovely to meet you. And if there's anything else that you'd like to know about the show, because I'm going to be doing one more episode that I'll be sharing after the show. So if you're not able to make it, do drop me a line. And if there's things that you'd like to hear from it, I'll be kind of sharing snippets of different sessions that went on. Really good to hear your feedback. You can pop me an email, natalie@thefertilitypodcast.com. If you want to hear more podcasts about issues affecting your fertility, the Fertility Podcast is released every Monday, and you can subscribe via your favourite podcast app.